Okay, so like I say, I run the in-home behavior management parent training program at LifeSpire. LifeSpire is a large organization that serves the people with intellectual disabilities in all 5 boroughs, and we have some services in Long Island as well. It started back in the early 1950s or so as a group of parents that got together. They were looking for services for their children, and back in those days there was basically a choice between either put your developmentally disabled individual into an institution or keep them at home. So this group of parents got together and founded, back then, what was known as ACRMD, the Association for Children with Retarded Mental Development. Back then it was a grassroots start, very small, but over 50 years or so it's grown into a very large organization, as I say, that serves individuals in a wide range of services, pretty much covering all the services that are out there. So we have residential services throughout all 5 boroughs, we have day treatment services, we have vocational support services, Medicaid service coordination is a big one. And we have family support services, that's the department that I'm from, and under the family support services, which are geared strictly for individuals who are living at home with their families, we have a bunch of programs with crisis intervention, the in-home behavior management program, we have a financial assistance program known as family reimbursement. I also have a travel training program in Queens and an in-home training program for Queens individuals. But all my family support programs are in Manhattan, Queens, and actually Brooklyn. I have a crisis intervention program in Brooklyn as well.
혹시 트랜스레이팅이 필요하세요? 아니면은 이분이 하시는 말씀을 어느 정도 이해를 하세요? 왜냐면 이렇게 말씀하실 때 제가 이제 그냥 해야 되거든요. 그래서 you need some translation.
I'm sorry?
You need some translation of this.
Yes, thanks for reminding me. Just stop me when I've said too much, because I said way too much.
So 굉장히 let me interrupt you. Okay, 이분이 말씀하신 중에 패밀리 서포트 서비스가 있죠. 그러니까 crisis-based behavior management, or the reimbursement program, or can you say a little bit more about the family support service, because it doesn't require medical, right?
Okay.
So they need a little bit more information about it, because we didn't mention about it previous workshop.
Yeah. Okay. So family support services are a program that was set aside by the state. It started in the mid-1980s or so, basically designed to help families keep their kids at home. So they wanted to offset unnecessary residential placements. So towards that end, these services don't require Medicaid in general. In the past few years, what they've done is they've started to waiverize many family support services. Sorry.
그냥 브리플리 그냥 이야기할게요. 제가 포커스하는 거는 패밀리 서포트 서비스가 있는데 아까 말씀드렸던 것처럼 메디케이드가 리콰이어드 하지 않아요. 그래서 어떤 분들은 메디케이드가 있어야만 프로그램을 받는 줄 아시는데 이분 일리걸리 계신 분들조차도 받을 수 있는 서비스예요. 그래서 그러한 서비스가 있다는 걸 알려주려고 말씀드리는 거예요. Can you tell them about the kind of services?
The kind of services, yeah. So under family support, so as I was saying, the family support services that I have at LifeSpire do not require Medicaid. There is a move to waiverize, there has been over the past few years, they've waiverized a lot of the family support services, meaning that some family support services do require Medicaid. For my services, we can talk, I can tell you about all the family support services. We have a travel training.
Travel training, 아이들 일단은 혼자 버스 타고 기차 타고 하는 그런 것들을 이제 교육시키는 프로그램도 있고요.
Okay. So under the travel training program in Queens, this is for Queens residents, we teach people how to become more familiar with their communities, basically. And that could be just going to their local stores, going around their neighborhoods, learning how to cross streets.
예, 그러니까 말씀드렸던 것처럼 그 커뮤니티를 자유자재로 돌아다닐 수 있도록 안전하게 그런 교육을 시키는 거예요.
Also, if the person is higher functioning, we'll teach them how to use public transportation. So buses, subways, which I know we don't have in Long Island, but in Queens, we have, we do travel training on buses and subways.
또 그 아까 말씀드렸듯이 것처럼 퍼블릭 트랜스포테이션을 할 수 있는 그 정도까지도 가르친다는 거죠.
Then also in Queens Family Support, we have in-home training, which is independent living skills training. So basically, we will teach an individual how to become more independent. Could be tying their shoelaces, depending on what level they're at. Tying shoelaces, telling time, making simple meals, handling money.
So it doesn't require Medicaid, right?
No.
이거하고 비슷한 게 커뮤니티 앱이에요. 이거는 메디케이드가 리콰이어 하는데 메디케이드가 없는 사람들은 이 프로그램을 들으면 되는 거예요. 그래서 집으로 와서 아이가 슈타이 하는 거나 드레스 하는 거나 목욕하는 거나 빨래 접는 거나 여러 가지 것들을 가르쳐주는 프로그램이라는 거죠. 그래서 제가 이분한테 말씀드려달라고 한 이유가 그러한 메디케이드가 없으신 분들도 이러한 서비스를 받을 수 있다는 거를 알으시면 이제 전해달라는 거죠. 그분들한테.
So we also have crisis intervention in Queens and Brooklyn. So that's, and many of these services, even though I don't have them with LifeSpire, other agencies in Long Island will have these services. And you can check with the people from the DDRO that are here today, and they can tell you, hopefully, that maybe they can give you a guide, I don't know, as to the services that are available. So I have crisis intervention in Brooklyn and Queens, and that's a service basically we will be like a referral and linkage. So somebody who needs a particular service, we'll try and find that service for them, hook them up to it. We'll follow through with applications, get them on waiting lists, we'll go into the home and assess the situation.
그러니까 무슨 특별한 사정이랄까는 어느 특별한 서비스가 필요한 경우에는 이제 어떻게 할지를 모르겠고 이럴 경우에 이분들을 통해서 이제 어떤 프로그램이 필요하다 이런 것들을 말씀을 해주시면 이 사람이 찾아가지고 이렇게 서비스를 찾아서 그 사람에 맞게 메디케이드가 없어도 찾아서 이제 리퍼럴도 해드리고 팔로우업도 해드리고 하는 그런 역할을 하고 있다는 거죠. 그게 MSC가 하는 역할이잖아요. 그렇죠? 그런데 메디케이드가 없어도 여기를 통해서 할 수가 있는 거죠.
Okay, and then another, probably one of my most popular services is family reimbursement, which is a financial assistance program, essentially. So if you purchase something for your child, maybe clothing, could be furniture, whatever it is that's used exclusively by your child, you can apply to have that cost reimbursed to you. So you basically submit the original receipt and an application and the psychological evaluation, documenting that the person is eligible. And there's a committee that reviews all of the applications, and you may be able to get, people in my Queens program, people have gotten back as much as $1,000 if they've spent, say, $1,000 on a bed, something like that.
1년 정도에, 그러니까 아이가 옷을 산다거나 뭐 아이에 필요한 것들, 어느 서비스 같은 것들을 받았을 경우에 이분 튜터링도 요즘에는 되더라고요. 그래서 그런 것들을 오리지널 리시브를 모아뒀다가 이제 제출을 하면 이제 그 돈이 뭐 다 나올지는 모르지만 맥시멈 1,000불이라고 하잖아요. 이전에 그거를 다시 돌려받을 수 있는 프로그램이래요. 그래서 그냥 주는 게 아니라 커뮤니티에서 리뷰를 해서 그러니까 이것도 메디케이드가 필요 없습니다.
Okay. And the key to all of these services, though, is to make sure you go through the eligibility review process done by the DDRO. You cannot receive any services unless you've gone through the eligibility review process, and the state of New York has said that your child is eligible for services.
그러니까 eligibility가 꼭 있어야 돼요. 그 psychological evaluation, everything 그러니까 3스텝에서 이제 그걸 해서 eligibility 받는다고 하죠. 그거가 꼭 있어야지 이건 받는 거예요. 그러니까 MSC나 메디케이드가 없어도 그 eligibility만 해서 이 front door 스텝을 꼭 거쳐야 되는 거죠.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, are there questions about eligibility? Do people go through front door?
지금 패밀리 서포트나 뭐 엘리지빌리티에 무슨 질문이 있으시면 하시거나 아니면 그냥 BA로 넘어갈까요? they want to, yeah, use it for the behavior management.
Okay. Yeah, so behavior management, that's another service we have. Lifespire.
Yeah, main
I'm sorry.
presentation. They don't have any question.
Right.
Yeah, and then they want us to do the main presentation.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So the in-home, this is the main presentation. Didn't get any main. So the in-home behavior management is a service where we send, Lifespire sends a clinician into the home once a week. This is a person who has a master's degree in psychology generally. Job title is known as a behavioral intervention specialist. They go into the home once a week. They work with the family for an hour to 2 hours each week, teaching them behavior management strategies and parenting techniques that they can use with their child to reduce whatever the problematic behavior is.
비헤이비어 매니지먼트 라이프 스타일에서 하는 거는 일주일에 한 번씩 그 스페셜리스트가 집으로 가서 아이의 행동을 보고 그냥 이거는 레시피도 아니고 그런 게 아니라 부모님을 가르치는 거예요. 그 아이의 그 certain 행동들을 어떻게 딜을 할 수 있는지를 가르치는 그런 프로그램이에요. 그래서 일주일에 한 번씩 집을 방문해서 이루어지게 됩니다.
So our goal is to empower the family to be able to independently manage the child's behavior. So, and I don't know if most of the programs I think are the same in how they operate, in that it's not a program where the clinician comes to the home and, you know, sometimes there's misimpressions where the clinician will come to the home and the mother, the father, whoever it is, will say, Johnny is throwing things all over the place, he's in his bedroom, I'm going to Pathmark. So it's, you know, doesn't work like that. It's a family level intervention. So it's the whole family.
그러니까 이 비헤이비어 매니지먼트는 부모님들에게 힘을 실어주는 거예요. 우리 아이가 무슨 행동의 문제가 있으면 이벤츄얼리 나중에는 미래에는 스스로가 그거를 딜할 수 있도록 도와주는 프로그램이기 때문에 만약에 클리니션이 갔을 때는 우리가 생각하기엔 누가 와서 우리 아이와 같이 있으니까 나는 쇼핑을 해도 되고 어디를 잠깐 갔다 와도 된다고 생각을 하는데 그런 레시피 프로그램하고 다른 게 이거는 부모님을 가르치는 프로그램이기도 하기 때문에 부모님이 꼭 이 클리니션하고 꼭 같이 해야 된다는 거죠.
And it's the same for YAI, and we even taken a step forward, and Jay may also have this, where we ask parents to collect data on the behavior issue. Because again, we're only working with the family once a week for a couple of hours, and you guys are our eyes and ears when we're not there. So we ask you to keep data and keep track of how often the behaviors are occurring.
비헤이비어 매니지먼트가 서비스가 이제 시작이 되면 어떤 그 비헤이비어가 정해질 거 아니에요. 타깃 비헤이비어가 그러면 그거에 대한 데이터를 커넥트를 부모님들에게 요구를 할 거예요. 왜냐하면 이 클리니션은 once a week를 가기 때문에 부모님들이 에브리데이 아이를 보고 아이하고 일하기 때문에 그 데이터 컬렉션 이런 것은 이제 부모님들이 주가 돼서 리스판스를 해주셔야 된다는 거죠. 그래서 부모님들의 역할이 굉장히 큰 거죠.
Does anyone have questions? Do you want to bring up specific behaviors that you want? You have questions about?
지금까지 한 거에 대한 질문이 있으세요? 아니면 이제 스페시픽한 그 example을 이제 퀘스천을 받을 거예요. 그래서 이분들이 이제 대답을 해주실 건데 이제 그 전에 질문이 있으시면 질문을 하세요.
저 같은 경우는 뉴저지에 살거든요. 혹시 리퍼럴 같이 정보를 주실 수 있는지?
She's living in New Jersey, so it's your catchment area.
Okay, so I don't know if anybody here's from New Jersey, but generally it's a different state is a whole different story. So there is no OPWDD in New Jersey. That's a state. That's New York State. So New Jersey, I don't know New Jersey. Sorry.
Unfortunately, I have friends who live there, but I don't know what their service is.
It's a whole different process. Yeah, so most of the stuff here, unfortunately, is not necessarily going to apply to you in terms of the nuts and bolts of how it works. Certainly more, things relating to problematic behaviors will apply, but in terms of getting services and who has and what process you have to go through, we wouldn't know.
OPWDD는 뉴욕 스테이트예요. 그러니까 스테이트마다 우리 장애인을 위한 프로그램들은 분명히 있어요. 거버먼트 브랜치와 그런데 이 OPWDD 여기 뉴욕 스테이트와 또 다르게 움직일 수가 있어요. 물론 비헤이비어 매니지먼트 프로그램도 있겠죠. 그런데 그거를 어떻게 런하느냐에 따라서는 이 뉴욕하고는 약간 다를 수도 있다는 거죠.
잠깐만요. 저는 롱아일랜드에 사는데요. 제가 한 달에 2번씩 우리 아이가 분노 조절 그런 게 있어서 페어런트 트레이닝을 한 달에 2번씩 서비스를 받고 있는데 그건 학군에서 페이를 하고 있거든요. 그럼 제가 이제 메디케이드를 며칠 전에 카드를 받았어요. 그럼 그쪽을 통해서 누가 와서 직접적으로 또 빨리하고 이제 그런 기본적인 그런 거를 도와줄 수 있는 그런 서비스를 또 받을 수 있나요?
그렇죠. She's living in Long Island. 아이가 학교 다니나요?
예.
Her child is in school right now, and he or she has a behavior management program from the school twice a month. Somebody is coming to home for the behavior management services. So her question is that if she can, the child can get the other waiver services because she has Medicaid like before recently. So her question is that if she can get another waiver services.
Well, I guess I would ask, how is the service? How does she feel the service is going?
지금 받는 서비스가 어떻다고 생각을 하세요? 그 비헤이비어 매니지먼트.
지금 받은 지 6번 정도 받았는데 아직은 차도가 없지요.
She doesn't feel any differences. The child has gotten 6 times so far. The services 6 times.
Okay.
I think 3 months, I think. But she doesn't feel any differences yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know exactly, are they working with you or are they working with the child? Or both?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Just 부모님을 페어런트 트레이닝을 해주는 거거든요.
Yeah. The program is for the parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Is the goal to manage behaviors at home or behaviors that are occurring in school? At home.
그러니까 그 비헤이비어가 집에서 일어나는 거를 지금 다루고 있는 거죠?
예.
Yeah. At home.
Okay. I mean, the only thing is sometimes they say that, saying too many cooks in the kitchen. So if you have somebody generating a behavior plan and then you have a second person generating a behavior plan, those two people really have to work closely together to coordinate the service, because otherwise you might have two completely different approaches to the same behavior. They might have different takes on it. So you're eligible for it to apply for an in-home behavior management program.
Okay, and also she was asking if she can get the community rehabilitation program.
Yeah, that would not affect it.
Yeah.
Getting behavior management from the school would not affect it.
그러니까 이분이 말씀하시는 거는 이제 또 다른 웨이버를 받으실 수 있어요. 메디케이드가 있으니까 MSC를 통해서 이제 웨이버를 신청을 하시고 그게 첫 번째 웨이버니까 프론트도어를 꼭 거치셔야 되고 만약에 그걸 받으시려면 그리고 지금 또 다른 비헤비어 매니지먼트를 또 받으실 수 있어요. 메디케이드 같은 경우는 아니 메디케이드 it doesn't necessary. It's not required Medicaid.
For Lifespire's program, it's not.
And not for why
그래서
not
지금 이쪽에 신청을 하셔도 또 받으실 수는 있으세요. 그거는 학교에서 받는 거니까. 그리고 이제 웨이버 서비스도 받으실 수 있으세요. 메디케이드가 있으시면.
But we have to caution that because you live in Long Island, you would have to check with the agencies that serve Long Island. So we don't.
그러니까 또 롱아일랜드 에이전시는 약간 또 다를 수도 있으니까 학교에서 받으시면은 또 외부에서는 비헤이비어 매니지먼트를 못 받을 수도 있으니까 여기는 필수니까 메인이 그쪽에 물어보시고.
So can I ask you more specific question to fixed behavior? I mean one of my kids at church he's keep hitting on his head, he's wearing his headgear, and also oftentimes he's biting. So this time, last Sunday, one of my teacher, he went to ER, or accident. So I don't know,
Oh, so he hurt himself so badly that he needs to go to the ER?
No, he badly hit himself,
Right.
but he's wearing his gear, but another behavior is that he's biting people. So it happened oftentimes. So I don't know, is there any applicable way to apply? I mean, we have a lot of expert it's really hard.
This is your child?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, my church child.
Okay,
kids.
I understand.
Well, what I can say is that there are a lot of different motivations for behavior, right? So escape could be one, attention could be another, wanting to get something. But then there's also sensory, right? So if the child is experiencing behaviors because of sensory issues, that's not necessarily something that can be approached from a behavioral point of view, because that's something that they may not necessarily have complete control over. So we would have to know if it's really a sensory situation or if it's an actual behavior. Because you mentioned that he hits his head, so he's wearing some sort of protective headgear, which is great. But it's the biting because he wants something, he wants attention, he is trying to escape a situation, or is it because it's not something that he can really control?
I mean, like his mother told me that I don't know, like he doesn't want to be with like people like closer to him. So like, I mean, she just told me that just being apart from me, and maybe that's the only thing.
So when he's apart from her, he bangs it? That's when he bangs his head?
She said that she doesn't want it to be with people like very closely.
Oh.
I mean, then he's like, yeah, he's taking some sort of like very bad action.
Okay, so he doesn't like people being close to him, and that's when he'll start headbanging. Right.
But besides that, like being just apart, I mean, there's no other like things. Because like we don't know where he's gonna go, so like always people have to be attended with him. So
He bites himself or others? Or both? Oh, bites others. Okay.
So is that his way of communicating, I don't want you near me?
I don't know, maybe.
Can he communicate or no?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, people with intellectual disabilities, they have some extra stressors that they have to deal with, and communication can be one of them. So if they can't communicate, they can have a very hard time telling people what they want. They may not be able to do it at all, other than perhaps banging their head or biting, that type of stuff. With all behavior, we look at something called the ABC, which is the antecedent, what happens before the behavior, B is behavior, and C is the consequences. So a clinician would look at that and try to figure out, is there something in particular that's happening before the behavior, the antecedent, that is causing the behavior, or is there something happening after the behavior, the consequence, which could be causing the behavior. So for instance, if he bangs his head and then people move away from him, then that's his reward. So that's his reinforcement to keep doing that, so he'll bang his head. Or, I guess a more common example, a kid with throwing a tantrum. If he throws a tantrum and then he gets what he wants, that's an example of the consequence influencing the behavior. So the kid is reinforced then to keep throwing a tantrum. But, it's hard to say, of course, but these are just, some possibilities.
조금 인터럽션을 한다면 그 antecedent가 뭐냐면은 그 아이가 그 행동을 만들게끔 하는 어느 환경이 있을 거예요. 그 환경 때문에 이 비헤이비어가 생긴 건지 너무 더워서 어째서 너무 노이즈가 강해서 정말 사람들이 너무 많이 나한테 다가와서 그런 환경이 아이의 행동을 커스할 수 있지만 또 하나는 그 행동 때문에 페어 텐션을 줬다면 그 결과 때문에 비헤이비어가 생길 수 있거든요. 그래서 우리가 그거를 잘 알아볼 필요가 있어요. 아이의 그 행동을 고치기 위해서는. 그래서 아까 센소리 이야기를 하셨잖아요. 막 들리는 거나 냄새나 이런 것들 아니면 익스케이프 하고 싶어서 어느 상황을 막 모면하고 싶어서 그런 행동이 있을 수 있거든요. 그래서 아이들이 저지르는 그 행동을 행동으로만 보시지 말고 전후를 잘 살피세요. 그 환경을 잘 살피셔서 그 이유를 우리가 알아내는 게 중요하다는 거죠.
Thank you.
다른 분 없으세요? 아이들 중에 지금 우리 아이들 중에 이런 비헤이비어가 있다고 생각하시는 거 지금 묻고 싶은 게 있으시면 한번 이야기를 해줘보세요. Whole day.
I'm sorry?
Whole day.
For the whole day.
Yeah.
Sleeping time also.
Yeah, sleeping time. Whenever, yeah.
Right.
So the problem is that she's biting
Biting, finger, any object.
anything.
Yeah.
And then when you try to remove the object so she's not biting it, then you see an escalation of behaviors and a tantrum.
Yeah.
So again, and you can jump in here, Jay, but it sounds like a sensory thing. And usually when it's sensory, we're getting something out of that. That's fulfilling a need that we have, right? So if we want to remove her from biting her finger or different objects, then we have to replace it with something more appropriate perhaps. Now what that might be, that's the question. But we can't expect her to stop the behavior necessarily because it's something that she's getting from it. So for example, I'm going to give a personal example. So when I was younger, I used to suck my finger. You know, so I was getting something from that. My mom would tell me to stop. It would always be, oh, you shouldn't do that. But I was getting something from it. So it was very difficult for me to stop that behavior. I got to a point where I eventually stopped, but for a very long period, it was something that I was getting from it. So it sounds like it could be something like that with your daughter, where she's getting something from that behavior. So again, if we want her to stop it, we have to replace it with something more appropriate. Now what that might be is something that you will have to try to figure out. Again, sensory is not my background. I'm not an occupational therapist. But usually, if this situation comes up with one of our cases, we would try to work with our occupational therapist to get some ideas of how we can replace the behavior with something different.
오케이, 그 경우에는 센소리 이슈 같은데 그 아이가 계속 뭔가를 빨고 문다는 거는 그걸로 인해서 자기가 얻는 게 있을 거예요. 그러니까 이유가 있을 거라는 거죠. 그래서 그 이유를 알아야지 되고 그거를 충족시키기 위해서 그 아이가 그걸 통해서 충족되는 게 있는데 그걸 충족될 수 있는 거를 다른 걸로 리플레이스 해줘야 돼요. 그래서 그거를 찾아내야 되는 거거든요. 그래서 그 과정이 이제 비헤이비어 매니지먼트 할 때 있을 건데 이제 이런 경우는 센소리니까 이렇게 빨고 이런 거니까 그 아큐페이셔널 테라피 같은 사람이 와서 이제 아이를 observation하고 그런 이제 서제스션을 할 수가 있다는 거죠. 그래서 뭔가를 할 때 거기에 있는 이유가 있어요. 그래서 그 이유를 충족시키기 위해서 그 아이가 계속 이거를 하는 거니까 다른 걸로도 그거를 충족시킬 수가 있거든요. 빠는 거 말고 가이딩 하는 거 말고 그걸 우리가 찾아야 되는 거죠. 그래서 그런 게 또 여기에 스피치게 되는 거죠.
And some other things that have been done also is maybe just creating a schedule of when it would be okay for her to put her finger in her mouth. Is it biting or is she sucking? What exactly is the behavior that she's doing?
빨아요.
빠는 거예요. sucking.
Sucking. Right. So that's hard to stop. As somebody who used to do it, it's a hard behavior to stop. So we could possibly try to decrease it slowly, like, have a certain time period where it's okay for her to suck her finger. And then just try to reward her when she's not doing that behavior. But again, the reward has to be strong enough that it's going to stop the behavior. Because again, you can give me anything, and it was not more strong than my desire to do that behavior.
어느 순간에 그 아이가 이제 빨지 않을 때가 잠깐이라도 있을 거예요. 그 우리가 캐치업을 해서 그때는 보상을 줘야 돼요. 보상을 주고 또 한 번 또 그걸 시도를 해보고 이러한 과정들을 해서 이제 그거를 고칠 수가 있게 된다는 거죠.
And also, just another idea, when we don't have anything to do, right, we kind of do the things that make us feel good. So sucking your finger makes you feel good. But if you are occupied and you're engaged in doing something else that you might like, then that might keep your mind off of sucking your finger. So that's another thing, just to maybe incorporate more activities throughout the day that she can focus on, so she's not focusing on sucking her finger only.
그러니까 이걸 손을 빨면서 뭔가를 즐거움을 느끼고 막 그러니까 그거를 대신해 주는 액티비티스, 그러니까 얘가 다른 거에 즐거움을 느낄 수 있는 그런 액티비티스 같은 거를 어레인지 해주는 것도 그거를 스탑하는 것 중에 하나고, 아까 전에 말씀드렸던 것처럼 보상을 해준다면 그 보상하는 게 이 아이가 손을 빨면서 보상받는 것보다 조금 더 강한 보상이어야 되겠죠. 그래서 그런 것들을 찾아가는 과정도 중요합니다.
저희 애는 30살인데요. 굉장히 어렸을 때부터 굉장히 고집이 셌어요. 그리고 인디펜던트고 이게 만약에 스케줄이 뭐가 됐는데 바뀌었다. 그럴 때는 막 화내고 눈차고 막 텐트를 막 시작을 하거든요. 그렇게 비헤이비어 있을 적에는요. 얘기를 해도 안 돼요. 만약에 제가 조그맣게 좀 더 크게 하고 막 밖에 나가서 소리 지르고 했을 때는 참
괜찮을 것 같아요.
없어도 돼요? 그래서 제가요, 또 비헤이비어 매니지먼트를 다녔어요.
잠깐 이야기를 좀 하죠. 제가 그 사정 이야기를. Her child is 30 years old, and I think autism이에요.
No, he's not. Intellectual disability.
He's very stubborn, very stubborn, and she doesn't want to change any schedule or anything. And 그런데 만약에 그런 게 많이 체인지가 된다면 텐트럼이 굉장히 많이 있고, 그래서 이제
Well, maybe it's my ear.
So if the schedule changes, he throws the tantrum a lot, and the parents try to intervene, then his voice getting more raised, and his tantrum gets worse. So yeah, and then the child gets the behavior management service from the
Yeah, he has been going on to the YAI a little while, and then they say he's finished, he doesn't need it. But since he got the girlfriend, he's getting worried. He tells the girlfriend what to do, and I hear, listen, that's none of the nonsense they're talking about. I don't know what they're talking, and he keep telling her what to do, and it's no sense. And then he make a very nice story, like that he's working, and then cross street, they have something excellent. He told everybody they're stabbing somebody, and he's bleeding all over. So the job is scared because he made some kind of very nice story, and whole neighbors knows what's going on. And the manager called up, and he made story. He fired on the other job because he made a nice story again. So I don't know, he's storyteller. And then I'm looking for behavior management, new management, because he really need it.
What would be the target behavior for him?
For them, first the story he's making, I want to stop story. I don't know how we're going to make a stop story. And then tantrum.
And the tantrum?
Yeah.
Okay. That might be a little easier to start.
Yeah, usually we like to prioritize
Yeah.
what's the behavior that's the most problematic.
Right.
And then you would start with that. Instead of trying to change the world, you don't want to do 3 things at once, but take whatever's giving you the biggest problem and work on that one first. And then once that gets resolved, then you'd work on
When
the
he
next
started
one.
tantrum, he kicked the door, he
Yeah.
broke the door, because I don't know how many times he hits it, and he's wild. He's not a small kid, he's a big kid, and used to be my, the other son was talking something, doing something, but that I cannot control. Sometimes if I said, no, you cannot do that, and it hit me. And while I'm driving, and something happened to outside, and he was yelling to other guy. I said, no, you cannot do that. And then he hit me right away. And then the other guy followed my house. And then I said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
So that sounds like it's definitely the more problematic.
Yeah,
of the
it's,
behavior.
and I cannot control that time. How are we going to control with that? While I'm driving, hitting me.
Right. Well, I have a few things. I don't know if you want to share something first.
No, you got it.
Okay. Well, I know that you mentioned before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the transitions for your son. He doesn't
No,
like
he's not.
when things
I see.
change, right? So sometimes we need to, the thing about it is we can give you some techniques and things on behaviors. We're the experts, so to speak, but you are the experts of your children, right? So you know your children better than we would ever. So some of the things that, if you know that he has difficulty with changes in his schedule, sometimes what is helpful is if we let them know prior to changing the schedule what they can expect next.
But they called up, like he has a party, there's a host going on,
Okay.
and they say the party is canceled. It's not my fault.
Right, it's not
But-
your fault.
So
right.
what I do, I leave a telephone, whatever who called, leave it alone, so let him listen to first.
Right.
Instead of I say
Exactly.
that. So
That's
he
good.
listened to first,
Mhm.
and then after a little while, he started angry, picking everywhere.
Right.
I'm not gonna say nothing until he come down
Right.
and I go back to them, I say that. But this is not acceptable because he needed anger management.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
kind of where I was going with
but I
that.
cannot find it.
Right, okay. Does he go to counseling of any type?
No, he uses the YAI,
Uh-huh.
and YAI say it's done, it's okay, it's
It's
good.
okay.
But
But it's me.
counseling is different. 그래서 카운셀링 가본 적은 있어요? 그러니까 그런 거를 이제 카운셀링을 통해서 자꾸 이야기를 하면서 인지적으로 도와주거든요. 이렇게 해볼래, 저렇게 해볼래 하면서 이야기를 들어주면서 하는 그런
How are you
카운셀링을
gonna find the counseling? Where I'm gonna go?
We have a lot, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so,
you live in Queens?
No,
Oh,
in Long
Long
Island.
Island.
Long Island, oh, okay.
That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
Were
Somebody
you
at his home.
receiving in-home? Was a counselor coming into your home?
No,
No, it was
I used to
behavior management.
But not in-home?
Yeah.
Sounds like perhaps through a clinic, maybe an Article 16 clinic, perhaps? Okay.
아티클 16 클리닉이라는 곳을 찾아보시면 그러니까 뭐 YAI도 카운셀링이고요. 굉장히 많은 곳이 카운셀링이 있어요. 롱아일랜드도 YAI가 나오고.
I'm looking for my insurance company and they don't have disability keep handling. They just have a normal person, you know, because I'm looking for psychiatrist, psychology, I go like,
Yeah, yeah.
But I think some of the agency they are providing the counseling for the.
that's the problem. What?
Yeah, depends on the
Cannot find it.
IQ also, roughly. Would you know roughly what your child's IQ is?
Yes, I know.
Okay.
He's 58.
Okay,
So
so,
he's eligible.
yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes, generally, they say if the IQ is below 50, they don't do counseling per se, because they don't feel
But
it.
it sounds like he's
Yeah.
verbal and
Oh,
he's
he's
able to
verbal.
comprehend.
He
Yeah.
cannot read it,
Mhm.
he cannot write it,
Right.
but verbally, socially,
Right, he understands, okay.
he knows all my block, everybody is a friend.
Mhm.
IQ가 50 이상이면 카운셀링을 받을 자격이 있어요. IQ가 50 아래면 아이들이 아무래도 인지 능력이 떨어지니까 카운셀링이 약간 효과가 없거든요.
오케이.
IQ가 50 이상이면은 엘리지블 하대요, 카운셀링이.
Okay, so I can go I don't know who do I have to go, that's my problem.
Okay,
Any
so,
suggestion, where do I have to go, you know?
Does your son receive Medicaid service coordination?
Yes.
So
They're
that
looking
could be a
for-
good help.
Yeah.
No, she cannot find it yet, MSD. I told her already and she cannot find it.
Are you looking for specifically Korean speaking?
No, he understands English better than me, so I'd rather go.
okay, there should be a guide, I don't know if the people from the DDRO have it, which would list all the Article 16 clinics in Long Island. And then, so that's, you know, unfortunately, they use these terms. Article 16, it just refers to the legislation that these clinics were created under. But Article 16 clinics are basically clinics that do psychotherapy, some of them do psychiatry for the intellectually disabled
Where I'm gonna
population.
find it?
아티클 16도 하나의 그 서비스예요. 그래서 그 OPWDD 서비스에 간다거나 아니면 구글을 하시면 돼요. 아티클 16 써보면 뭐 롱아일랜드 구글 하시고 뭐
Article 16.
핀스 그렇게 하면 쭉 나와요. 근데 뭐 라이프 스파이어 you have Article 16.
We do have Article
Yeah,
16
and the
clinics.
YAI, AHRC, many big agency has the Article
Because
16.
he has ambulance health insurance, and then he got the Medicaid.
I think it's
So
okay.
That would be
I can go
fine.
either
Yeah.
way.
For Article 16, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely.
But there's a book, there should be a book, and maybe it's online, or if you're internet savvy, you could do like just a Google search, I don't know what the website is, Long Island DDRO, Long Island DD Council,
I'm
maybe.
sure they
these
have
things.
do they have a table here? The DDS?
Well, they did front door. I didn't see a
So just go to
table.
them and ask them
Is there a
directly.
table? I didn't see a table for them.
한번 이따가
It's abuse. I feel like, where is the adult abuse? You know, this is, they're looking for child abuse a lot.
Right.
But what about the adult abuse?
Right, you're right. And,
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
and I think also just in regard to, you know, when you're in the car and you're driving and he's engaging in those behaviors, that's a safety
Yeah.
thing. So, you know, the consequence for me would be to go back home, you know, because it's not safe for me to drive when you're acting this way.
Oh, that's worse.
Yeah,
Am I gonna hit the car, make a break the door, break the window? I cannot do that.
right.
그럴 때는 집으로 돌아갈게요.
That's what you say, that's what easy to say that, but when tension come up,
Right.
I-
So then the idea is to prevent the tantrum from happening.
Right, exactly, but-
Because a lot of times, once the tantrum happens, then we're reacting to that, but then it can escalate to the point where the child is not going to be able to be
right,
controlled at that point.
but I'm driving, I'm driving not to fast, and the other car coming in, shoot, and then he gonna stand to him. I said, what's the matter with that car? Why they go to the front? I said, it's gonna be trouble now.
Right. So it sounds like he definitely
Yeah.
reacts. He
React,
gets
thank
very emotional when
Yes.
things around him change that
Yes.
you have no control over.
No.
It's not because of you. So I think it would be helpful for him to find a way to manage and to cope with his emotions in the way that he reacts to things.
That's why I was thinking to go to give psych medication. I said, no, this isn't right. If the medication works, you go side direction all the time.
Right.
So I'm trying not to give any medication. Because psychology doctor was asking me, do you like to give some medication?
Right.
I said no, because what happens when you give psych medication, they always go side direction.
Right. There's always side effects.
Dr. Lou asked me, can you give it? I said, let me hold it, let me hold it. I'm holding constantly.
Right.
But I would just keep in mind that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the problem is worse than the side effects.
Right.
So if he attacks you while you're driving and you get into a car accident and people get hurt, maybe the side effects were a better option.
비교가 굉장히 그러니까는 심하면 약을 먹는 것도 괜찮아요. 그 사이드 이펙트보다 이게 더 중요하니까. 그러니까 세이프티 이슈가 더 중요하니까.
근데 제가 사이드 이펙트를 많이 맞아봤어요, 제가. Side medication is, I have,
사이드 이펙트, a lot of side
yeah,
effects.
he has experience giving some medication. He was getting side direction, so they want to change another medication. He got another side direction, and he went to emergency room hospital because of the side direction.
Right.
So
Is
I'm
that your
afraid-
child? Your
Yeah,
talking
my
about?
son. That's
Your
why I'm
son.
trying not to give him medication, and I'm trying to watch over. Maybe counseling again.
Right.
I think for this case, maybe psychotherapy, right?
I think it would be helpful for him, just to be able to cope with his emotions. Because again, it's not anything that you're doing wrong.
Right.
You know, it's not anything that you have in control. But when things happen, this is how he responds to it.
Right.
So it would be helpful for him to be able to find a way to cope with those emotions.
그러한 자기의 감정 조절을
네.
호흡할 수 있는, 그러니까 억제하고 이렇게 그러니까 누를 수 있는 그러한 스킬들을 배울 수 있는 그러한 사이코테라피 이런 것도 괜찮거든요. 그래서 그런 거를 한번 알아보셔도 될 것 같아요.
네. 그게 쉽지가 않네요.
It's not easy.
It doesn't sound like it at all.
예.
또 다른
저희 소녀는 9살 반에서 3살 사이인데요. 집안 온도도 되게 중요한 거야, 센서리거든요. 적당한 온도가 어떤 저희 집안 온도는 75에 76인데요.
무슨 비헤이비어가 있나요?
밤에 잠을 안 자고 뛰어다니는 소리
She has granddaughter, 2.5-year-old right now.
2.5?
Yeah. And then she couldn't sleep at night. Yeah, even at night she is running all the house, around the house like that. So she's asking, is there any appropriate temperature, home temperature for the children have the good sleep at night?
Is that home what? Is there any what?
Temperature.
Oh, that's
I thought it was
temperature that, wow. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think everybody has their own personal preference. But have you ruled out any medical issues with sleeping, or?
No.
Okay, so I think, you know, even with behaviors, we always try to find out if there's any other reason that this behavior could be occurring. So you always want to try to rule out what it isn't, and then we can find a way to focus on it as if it is a behavior. But if there's a something medical with that, then we need to first, you know, approach it from that aspect.
그 행동이 뭐 때문인지 그 이유를 먼저 알아야 된다는 거죠. 아니면 그게 메디컬 이슈일 수도 있거든요. 그래서 그런 것들을 한번 이제 단터나 이런 분들은 사회를 할 수 있다고요. Maybe the temperature may be important. I think,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you that I think that cooler temperatures are better at night than warmer, because when people are in warmer temperatures, usually that just makes it harder to sleep. It's kind of almost like a bear hibernating. You know, the cooler temperatures are usually better for sleeping. But again, I'm not, you know, I would check out the other stuff as well. I would ask, what is the baby doing during the day? Are they napping during the day? inconsistent napping. You know, one thing I would think of, I'm not a sleep expert, but I would think maybe you want to not have the baby napping during the day if they're not going to sleep at all at night. What is the, you know, are we doing like the wind down process at night where, you know, dimming the lights and having kind of a build up to sleep? I don't know, it's hard to speculate, but.
And then the other thing too is the concern that she's not sleeping, or is it what she's doing when she's awake at night?
그러니까는 어떤 게
Both, right. So I think first you might want to figure out where you want to focus your attention. So it sounds like just getting her to sleep throughout the night might be the way that you want to kind of focus that. So again, I'm not a sleep doctor either, but there's definitely, if she, like Jay said, if she's sleeping during the day, that gives her a lot of energy to wake up in the middle of the night. So maybe hold off on having that nap and just have her in bed. Routines are also very important. Bedtime routine, getting in the bed at the same time every day, so that your body starts to feel sleepy around 8 o'clock when it's time to go to bed. So having those routines are very important as well.
So I have 10 stage, the younger
Yeah,
age.
right. In LifeSpire's program, there are no age restrictions, so it would be any age.
Right, as long as they're OPWDD eligible.
Right.
So in a certain family.
Are you in Long Island or Queens?
I live in New Jersey right now.
Oh, you're in New Jersey, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that woman in the back that raised her hand earlier, I don't know.
어머니
저요?
예.
저희 아들은 현재 23살이에요. My son met some character are at 4 years old at PDI 제가 한국말로 계속 할때 바니라는 인형 아시죠? 혹시 바니 그 퍼플 컬러의 바니 바니 그 저희 아들이 그 PDI 그 4살 때 갈 때 바니 캠페인에서 그거를 굉장히 학교에 도네이션을 많이 했어요. 여기에 바니 포스터 Bunny doll, everybody get the bunny doll, and the book, videotape. 근데 그 캐릭터만 보면 애가 이상해져요. 그래서 우리가 그 아인슈타인 병원에 요체마 그 닥터를 만났더니 그 닥터 말이 이 캐릭터가 엄성도 그렇고 이 색깔도 그렇고 이 점수에 굉장히 나쁘다. 그래서 이거를 예로부터 어떻게 떼게 해야 된다 해서 그것 때문에 많은 전문가를 만나서 어떻게 하면 이해하고 관의를 뗄까 하고 정말 이 사이콜로지스트를 우리가 얼마나 만나고 어떤 분은 우리 아들 갖고 논문을 쓰더라고요.
제가 한 가지 그러면 어떤 행동이 있나요?
지금 저희 아들이 한 2년 전부터 그 리스퍼리덤 그 약을 먹이기 시작했어요. 그동안 약을 안 먹이고 아빠가 어떻게 해보자. 왜냐하면 부작용 때문에. 근데 그 약을 먹였더니 애는 좋아지는데 살이 쪄요. 그래서 요즘 수영을 일주일에 한 3번을 하는데 뭐 조금 더 이상 찌지는 않는 것 같은데 지금 우리가 걔를 위해서 다른 캐릭터를 그렇게 막 신경을 쓰게 하고 했지만 반이만 생각하면 애가 뒤집혀요.
근데 지금 아내는 없죠? 네.
집에는 없지만 걔가 컴퓨터에도 볼 수 있고 그 다음 상상을 하고
그러면 잠깐 이야기 좀 할게요. He's 3 years old, and when he was 4 years old, when he went to the school school district for the kindergarten or preschool, there was a promotion for the Bonnie character. So it was the doll, it was the poster, it was some CD regarding the Bonnies all over. And then since then, whenever he sees that or he heard the voice, yeah, his behavior getting hyper, very active. So right now, all the bunnies has been removed from his sight right now. But whenever he gets into the computer and he has this character, then his behavior starts again. But and also he started taking the medication for the hyper ADHD.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think last year and 2 years ago, and he has side effect. He has getting the gain weight a lot. So she doesn't want to give him the medication at this time. 지금 막 먹고 있나요? But still he's taking the medication. So
얘가 컴퓨터를 하니까 그것도 카피를 해서 우리 모르는 곳에 그 많이 그 펜슬을 숨겨놔요.
he hid Bonnie's picture. Yeah, he printed out from the computer because he knew everybody get rid of Bonnie's from him. So he hid the Bonnie's picture from the computer printed out. And then sometimes see it, right? Yeah. And it made him very hyper.
Is he autism?
Autism,
yeah. Individuals with autism some of them will tend to get very, very focused on something, almost obsessed with it, and they won't let it go. Asperger's, maybe? Asperger's?
에스퍼저인가요? 그러니까는 아티즘도 아스퍼거라는 게 있거든요. very high functioning 아이들. 그거는 모르시죠? She doesn't know.
Okay, all right. Well, it's not uncommon at all to have that hyper focus on one particular thing. The one thing that was said, which maybe you can correct me, but ADHD medication usually has the opposite effect. It usually makes you, they worry about people not gaining enough weight with ADHD because most of the ADHD meds are stimulants based on an amphetamine. So that doesn't sound right. Something's not adding up there. That they said the ADHD medication was making him gain weight. Maybe there was a different. It's very common for psychotropic medications, things for psychiatric conditions, schizophrenia, that kind of stuff. That stuff will make you gain weight, but not ADHD medication. So I'm not sure what.
그 사이드 이펙트가 그 레스피레이터 그 아이의 하이퍼한 그 액티비티 때문에 먹는 그러한 약 때문에 오는 것 같지는 않은 것 같아요. 대부분 그런 약은 사이드 이펙트가 그 살이 찌는 게 아니고 스키조프레니아 같은 그 멘탈 헬스에 관한 약이 이제 사람이 살이 찌게 만드는데 그거에 대해서는 좀 이상한 것 같다고 이야기를 하네요.
우리 애는 눈이 핀포인트 됐어요. 레스피레이터 먹였더니 딱 아이가 핀포인트 해갖고 우위를 쳐다봤어. 걸어 다니는데도 막 이상하게 걸어갖고 뉴스페더를 먹으면 애가 걷질 못해요. 그러니까 사이즈 백신이 이거.
Yeah, when her child was taking the respirator, he's walking like the zombie like that. So it was a side effect.
Right, that's a different medication. That's a different class. That's not an ADHD medication.
Since your child has been taking the medication, have you seen any improvement in the behaviors, the hyperactivity behaviors?
After taking the medication?
Yeah, he's been taking it for 2 years.
Well, I don't know if she stopped it though. Did she stop the medication?
Still taking.
Oh, okay.
그 메디케이션을 먹은 다음에 그 행동들이 좀 줄어들었나요? Yeah.
So it does actually suppress the hyperactivity, but you're more concerned about the weight gain. That goes with
어떤 게 그러면은 but still he has the bunny.
Yeah, the bar.
Yeah, and hiding somewhere.
Right.
And whenever he has those kind of voice or the picture, his behavior getting
Right.
So can you describe what his behavior looks like?
그 행동이 어떤 건지 한번 자세히 이야기 좀 해주시겠어요?
바니를 보고 그 일단은 화를 내고
When he saw the bunny, he getting angry, upset, mad.
Barney's supposed to make you happy.
그리고요.
또 화가 나니까 본인이 뭘 던지려고 하는데 요즘 약을 먹고 던지지는 않아요.
Before taking the medication, throwing something object, throwing object.
So the medication helps.
Yeah.
So he
People
throws.
medication. before taking medication.
Oh,
Before,
taking
right,
it.
so the medication helped.
Yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
the,
yeah, reduce the
근데 저 친구는 어떻게 하면 좀 그 관리를 좀 잊어버릴 수 있을까 하는 바람이에요.
Her question is that how we can help him forget. Yeah, Barney.
I don't think we'll
Yeah.
But
But the people who made Barney dedicated their lives so you'd never forget Barney. That's the problem.
처음 만났거든.
그러니까 그게 지금 인식이 되어 있기 때문에 그거를 완전히 잊어버리기에는 못할지도 모른다는 거죠. Yeah.
okay, so what is the behavior still occurring currently? When he sees Barney, is he still throwing objects and becoming angry, or so he still does that whenever he sees Barney, regardless of the medication?
지금도 이제 바니를 보면 약을 먹고 있긴 하지만 보는 순간에 화가 나고.
아니만큼은 얘가 옛날하고 똑같아요.
Yeah, not changing. Whenever see the Barney, hear Barney, yeah, and then yeah, even if you're taking the medication.
No, even when taking
Yeah.
But it got better after the medication, I think.
Yeah,
Okay. And how do you currently respond to that when that happens?
어떻게 그러니까 대응을 하시나요? 그런 행동들이 나타나면?
저 허그하고 뭐
Yeah,
좋아하는 거뭐 사준다 하고.
yeah, and then buy him what he likes. Yeah, and hug him. Yeah, like that.
Okay, does that work for him?
그게 작동을 하나요? Yeah, it works. She works. Yeah.
Okay.
So it can be also managed by the behavior management. It can be
Yeah,
helpful.
where do you live?
이게 로마에
Yeah, that's certainly something that a behavior management team could look at. Yeah.
매니지먼트 팀이 가서 한번 보고 이유나 여러 가지 것들을 한번 보면은 또 그게 도움이 될 수도 있다는 거죠. 거기서 이제 찾아볼 수 있고 이유들을.
Yeah, I mean, some of these, I mean, that's interesting. There are these fixed, like I say, these fixations that are not uncommon among individuals with autism. There was, well, there's a lot of stories. Many of them make the news. Sometimes there was this guy years ago who was obsessed with taking subway trains. He was obsessed with the subway, and then he would drive the trains. He would get in, drive the trains, and, it just never ended. He'd go to jail, he'd come out, or he'd go to a treatment program, come out. So some of those things can be very intractable, very difficult to treat. But certainly, if you've gone through, have you gone through eligibility?
OPWDD eligibility 있으세요? 지금 서비스 받고 계세요?
We have a coordinator.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And have they tried to get a behavior management program for you?
비헤이비어 매니지먼트 프로그램을 한번 알아봐달라고 말씀하신 적 있으세요? 같이 상의해본 적 있으세요?
We still discuss.
Yeah, they are discussing right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know of a quick answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It's not easy.
Yeah.
No, it's not easy just because we don't know enough about it, but there's different ways, I think, just in general to manage those types of things. Again, if something makes us angry, how to be able to express our anger in a more appropriate manner. So that's what it sounds like. He needs some coping mechanisms, and a lot of times that's what we'll try to help the people that we work with. Of course we can manage the behavior itself, but you can't always manage their reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about helping them to self-regulate and find ways to cope with their emotions. So if you get angry, that's okay. But what can you do instead of throwing objects? Or if you throw an object, maybe I'll throw a pillow instead of a glass. So just trying to replace it and find ways so that it's appropriate. And it's okay. We all get angry and we all, find ways to express it, but we want to make sure that we do it in a way that's not harmful to ourselves or to other people.
그러니까 이제 아이가 그러니까 앵거 나는 거는 괜찮은데 이제 그거를 이제 appropriate하게 적당하게 나쁜 방법이 아니고 이제 파지티브한 웨이나 아니면 다른 사람들한테 해가 가지 않는 그런 방법으로 그런 것들을 다스릴 수 있는 방법들을 그러니까 배우는 것도 중요하다는 거죠. 커핑 스킬이거든요. 그래서 it can be either in therapy, 카운셀링, 테라피나 그런 카운셀링을 통해서도 그런 게 가능하거든요. 그 아이가 IQ가 어느 정도인지는 모르겠지만
알고 있어요.
얼마 정도?
50 조금 넘어.
His IQ is over 50, around
Oh, okay.
50. So maybe counseling이 가능할 수도 있으니까 그런 것도 한번 알아보시는 것도 괜찮을 거예요.
Yeah, what I would want to figure out is why he seeks out Barney. So he seeks out this guy, this character that he likes, I guess, but that it makes him angry. I don't know why it makes him angry if he likes Barney. That's a puzzle to me.
왜 바니를 자기가 앵글이 해가면서도 그걸 또 계속 그렇게 찾는 건지.
노천마 그 닥터분께서 그 바니의 보이스 저희도 그 얘기를 듣고 들어보니까 정서적으로 이게 맑은 목소리가 아니에요.
근데 왜 계속 바니를 찾는 건지 그거를 우리가.
자기 첫 캐릭터니까 저 생각은.
Because he had very good psychology예요, psychiatrist예요. 그분이.
Psychology.
She had a very good psychology, and the psychology heard the Barney's voice, and it seems to be very negative. It make the people very angry, maybe. Yeah, so that's why when he heard the Barney's voice, getting upset or angry like that. But she thinks that the child getting obsessed from the very beginning, around 4 years old, so it cannot be get rid of, I think. She thinks like that.
Right, so again, you're right, it may not ever be something that he won't be obsessed with, but we can try to help him to deal with his emotions whenever he is presented with a Barney picture or hears his voice.
그 behavior management도 한번 생각을 해보세요. 그런 거를 도와줄 수 있을 거니까. Yeah. She say thank you.
이분도
예.
그 얘기 나누신 거랑 이게 인슈런스도 다 커버되나요? 지금 얘기하시는 뭐 OW 뭐
OPWDD
거기에
서비스.
그게 다 그게 다 커버되는 거예요? 거기?
Management is a family support service, so it's covered by the state of New York. No charge to the families, and it's not billed to Medicaid. It's strictly it's a grant from the state of New York, OPW.
일단은 그 질문에 관해서 OPWDD는 여러 가지 서비스가 있어요. 그래서 이 패밀리 서포트 서비스는 어떤 인슈런스한테도 비를 하지 않아요. 메디케이드도 OPWDD에 있는 스테이트, 뉴욕 스테이트에 있는 돈을 사용하는 거예요. 그래서 메디케이드나 다른 인슈런스에 비를 하지 않을 거예요. 비헤이비어 매니지먼트나 패밀리 서포트 서비스는 아까 말씀드렸던 웨이버 서비스는 메디케이드가 있어야 되는 거예요.
So with any family support service, the only way to receive it is if your child is deemed eligible by the state to receive services. I think Jay mentioned that before.
엘리지빌리티만 있으면 패밀리 서포트 서비스는 받으실 수 있으세요. 메디케이드 없으셔도.
Any more questions?
Yeah, he has, I think.
We got one in the back too.
제가 스텝선도 둘이 있는데
He has the two stepsons.
큰 애가 23살이고 둘째 21살인데 큰 애는 지금 정신병을 많이 갔어요.
지금 지적장애나
지적장애 아니고 둘째는 지적장애 있어요. 그래서 큰 애는 마리화나를 많이 피고 어렸을 때부터 걔가 소리를 많이 듣고 한식 공부를 그래서 그것도 너무 시끄러우니까 대화를 좋아하고 대화를 계속 듣다가 그리고
잠깐만요. He asked him about his son. His older son is not the DD population.
His older son is what?
Yeah, not the DD
Not-
population.
okay.
Yeah, but he has a little bit mental issue. He hear voice. He sees something, and then he start because of that he started marijuana. Yeah, smoking marijuana. Yeah.
그건 끊지 못하고 지금 진단 명령은 앵거하고 바이폴라
bipolar disorder.
ADHD가 나왔어요.
ADHD, bipolar, yes, those often go together too.
그래서 지금 하도 많이 가서 이걸 몰랐어요. 그 저랑 이제 스텝son인데 저랑 결혼했는데 그 엄마는 얘가 좀 주의력 산만이다 그랬는데 얘가 고등학교 중퇴했는데 제가 결혼해서 얘가 딱 그 GED 보라고 해서 GED 보낸 다음에 QCC를 보냈어요. QCC 갔더니 걔가 뭐 사람이 죽겠는 살리는 보이시는 들어가서 그래갖고 이제 앰뷸런스 와서 그 다음에 얘가 이제 그런 정신적인 장애를 알았죠. 그리고 레브스타를 지금 계속 하는데 요번에 한 번 더 가면은 왜 거기 윈체스터 애비뉴 있죠? 거기는 그 정신병원에 간다고 그러고요. 라스트 찬스가 있는데 지금 제 앞에서는 다 그렇다 나는 안 하려고 애를 쓰는데 어떻게 될지 몰라요.
그래서 질문이
네, 근데 얘는 별 걱정이 아닌데 그다음 얘는 그 병원 치료를 받고 있으니까 둘째, 제 스텝선 둘째는
second child.
예, 그
We
21인데
can do
얘는
one at a time now.
아 예.
Yeah.
예, 그러면 첫 번째 아이에 대한 질문은 없으세요?
예, 그래서 얘는 병원에 다니니까 그다음에 오케이.
Right now, the first child, the older child, the stepson, he has
Bipolar and
yeah,
ADHD.
bipolar. Yeah,
So
he
I'll
has
watch it. So
yeah.
I will, because I have so many stories. That's why I'm gonna. The main thing is my second is.
But his question is for the second one.
Not for this.
Yeah.
Second one has my stepson has 21. He's in Queens College, QCC, not Queens College,
Queens Community
Queensboro Community.
Yeah, and he had it's ADD.
Uh-huh.
She has
It's,
a
okay. ADD is the old term. It's ADHD, but yeah.
So because he graded the 고등학교 졸업한 게 왜 그러냐면 착실해갖고 국민학교 때부터 계속 퇴근을 해요. 그러니까 졸업을 해요. 졸업을 했는데 휴식을 들어가면서 약간 지적장애가 있으니까 졸업할 때 될지 안 될지 몰라요. 근데 애는 순하고 그리고 예전에 저랑 재혼하기 전에는 제가 스텝son 아빠니까 항상 맨 첫 번째 맨날 맞고 그래갖고 말을 못했어요. 대화를 못하다가 저랑 같이 와서 이제 대화를 하게 된 거예요. 우리 애들하고 같이. 그래서 대화를 되게 많이 좋아졌는데 지금 제일 걱정은 요즘 졸업하게 될지 못하게 될지 QCC를 모르는데 더 큰 게 얘가 추진 좀 시켰으면 좋겠는데 어디 또 어떤 얘는 순해서 별 문제는 없어요.
He's 21 years old right now in the Queens Community College, and he has ADD and intellectual disability right now. Yeah. So his main concern is that he really wants his stepson to get the job.
To get the what?
Job.
A job.
Yeah. in
Oh, okay.
Korea. Yeah.
공무원 같은 자격이 더 좋겠고 얘는 상당히 성실해요. 성실한데 요즘 말도 많이 나서는데 아직까지 지적 장애 같은 게 있고 행동에는 약간 액션에서 문제가 있고
He wants his stepson get the government job after graduation.
I would like a government job.
So he is asking 어떻게 가질 수 있느냐는 거예요.
예,
질문이.
예,
His question is how he can get the job after graduation.
Ah, okay. Is this 21-year-old in OPWDD?
OPWDD 서비스에 있나요?
그런 건 없어요.
No, he doesn't have eligibility나 프론트도어나.
옛날에 어렸을 때 미드스쿨 하이스쿨 좀 받았대요. 좀 받았는데 그 다음에 이런 게 이제 아예 엄마는 그런 거 부정하고 싶어 하잖아요. 우리 애가 어떤 장애라는 걸 부정하고 싶어 하는데 얘가 AD도 확실하고 이제 많이 치료를 했는데 순해서 별 학교에서 문제가 없어요.
일단은
요즘 받질 않아요. 아무 교육도.
he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have eligibility.
Well, he should apply, because I thought he said he has intellectual disability.
Yeah, he thought that.
Oh,
he
but
thought that.
he,
그 intellectual 그 지적 장애라는 건 부모님이 생각을 하시는 거죠? 어디 병원에서 이야기를 한 건 아니고.
병원 얘기하는 건 아니고.
Yeah, they thought that they are thinking the child has maybe intellectual disability.
did he go through regular school or was he in special
Regular
education?
Regular school.
No special education?
No. So even school has a special education people.
언제요?
middle school and high school.
In the middle school, in high school, he was in the special education,
Yeah.
some of them, not the
So he
whole.
may be, so the first step is to see if he's eligible for OPWDD services. There's a big push in OPWDD to get people employed. I've never, I don't know, I haven't had somebody ask specifically about a government job.
It's the mom.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's always the first step I would say is to have them reviewed for eligibility, because then there are supported employment programs.
Right.
There are programs that will help them get jobs. Again, I don't know about government jobs.
Okay, all right.
지금 이제 엘리지빌리티가 없기 때문에 엘리지빌리티를 받으셔서 OPWDD 서비스를 같이 이제 알아보시고, 현재 OPWDD는 잡을 많이들 받게끔 푸시를 하고 있는 상황이기 때문에 좋은 찬스가 될 수도 있으니까 한번 알아보시면 좋으실 것 같아요.
The other thing too to keep in mind is that age of onset for OPWDD, he has to be deemed eligible before he reaches a certain age. So he's already 21, and I believe the age is 22. So you need to start that process sooner rather than later, because he needs to be determined eligible before. If you wait, then he will not be eligible for
Well,
service.
actually, if there's documentation that he was in
Right,
special
right,
ed, then
exactly.
he could get it at 45, but
Right.
it's easier just to apply now and get that looked into. Yeah.
So psychological evaluation is the first step.
Okay, we're gonna let it out at this session at this point, and then we're gonna move on to the next station.